I'm hopeful that we're going through a woozy romantic period with the ease of digital, and I'm hoping that while this generation is completely hopeless, that the next generation that will come out will demand the real thing.
The mystery of film, no, I think that's, I could do without that, really. I love film, don't get me wrong, but I could do without all that mystery stuff. I kind of like seeing what you're shooting, that's it, we got that, move on, let's do something else. It's about the eye behind the camera, it's not about the bloody technology, it's about the person behind it and
Yeah. But what I knew as cinema is dead.
It's a bigger palette, really, than I feel I can get from film.
So the people hanging on to film at this point are really hanging on.
Back in my day, you at least needed 16 millimeter to do something like that, which was a Mount Everest most of us couldn't climb.
I mean, and I can sleep at night not worrying about what the lab report is the next day. I mean, which is, it's quite a big thing, really, Yeah. I mean, you can take it further because it's there. You can. That's what I feel. Sometimes I feel on film, I'm just playing a little safe.
Now, why an established filmmaker would shoot on digital, I have no fucking idea. It just, I don't get it at all. Don't get it. I just can't understand it.
I'd use an iPhone, I wouldn't. I'm fed up with this conversation. I think it's what's in the frame and
it always is, isn't
how you light it.
Over the past century, the way we shoot and consume our films has changed in major ways. We live in a time where shooting high-quality digital video has become easier and more accessible to everyone, with the days of analog shooting seeming more like an old-fashioned necessity, especially when the need for high-end digital cameras has become even a topic for debate in recent years. But even with this change to the industry, there's remained a large enough dedication to the use of physical film that it would be unfair to just call it a cult following. But why? The average reviewer might say they can't even tell the difference, and if you say you can tell the difference, the advancements in accessibility of color grading can now meet these aesthetic needs in post-production and save all of the money that physical film usually costs a production. Even beyond the color, other advancements in DI can now replicate what once were the dead giveaways of the format, like the expected grain or film artifacts that can now all be replicated digitally. But it doesn't take much to realize that digitally and cost-effectively simulating the look of film isn't always the go-to approach for some directors. Looking at Kodak's own website will show several recent high-profile films and series that have used their 35mm products, even if just for a select part of the production. And it's not so different with the larger 65 and 70mm formats, which on some major productions are accompanied by these notoriously loud IMAX cameras. To answer the question of why we see this trend, it's worth looking at the people behind the image itself. A DOP, cinematographer or director might take you back to those videos with the IMAX cameras and large format film and tell you that it's to do with the resolution of the image, which, although it's more to do with the scanner rather than the film itself, is still hard to replicate even with most modern digital cameras. But not all directors will be able to get their hands on such machines, so instead they might tell you that it's more to do with the intention and discipline when shooting on physical film, rather than the technology. That while there can be added costs of buying, storing, processing and scanning the film, if done correctly, shooting analog can pull back on these costs with the right discipline on set, largely through shooting ratios, which refers to how many takes there are compared to what actually gets used. But these small savings are hard to measure, and really it's hard to argue that discipline is a skill specific for analog shooting, so it's more likely that these material costs will sound alarm to the producers, which ultimately have to come down to an agreement on the budget with the director. A money-worried producer might tell you that although a high-end digital camera will cost a pretty penny to use, realistically, if you're going to scan the analog film and post-produce it digitally how you would have done anyway, realistically the savings will be minimal, if not more expensive. An example of a director running into this problem is with one of the most well-known American series, Breaking Bad, when director Vince Gilligan had his DP, Arthur Albert, shoot both film and digital to compare for how they would shoot for the next installment in the series, Better Call Saul.
Showed us all this footage, and I figured if I could pick out the film, if Peter and I could pick out the film, we'd shoot film, even at the cost of $100,000 more an episode, which is what they tell us we're saving, more or less. And I hate to say it, we couldn't pick out the film.
However, a good amount of the time, when a director runs into this dilemma, they would rather tell you about the personal connection they have with the format.
But we miss film.
Why?
You know, I don't have a great reason for you other than I miss the history of it. When I think of film, I think of all the wonderful movies that made me interested in this medium in the first place. They were all shot on film. It just has a romance to it.
Which might suggest shooting on film is something more personal, rather than anything measurable to the audience. But it'd also be wrong to talk about this question without looking at the bigger picture. Firstly, although digital restoration and preservation practices are increasingly widespread, specialized analog film labs and processing services continue to operate globally, which can only really be supported by this niche demand. But secondly, during a time of increasingly convincing AI-generated content, shooting analog can feel like a refuge in the physical, real world. And even with a blow to theatres and cinemas, there has remained a buzz around the physical experiences and materials that were once the foundation of this industry. So, to conclude, perhaps the debate itself is approached in the wrong way. Maybe the question is phrased wrong. Maybe it's not a question of why we're still shooting film, but whether actually there's something innately human about these physical mediums and spaces themselves. That much like other forms of art, there remains a dedication to physical formats. And whether you agree with it or not, they're yet to go away. And ultimately, there has to be something to be said for that.